Okay, hopefully this is working. We are introducing our second class for the parenting class that we've been offering, and it's kind of at a weird time of day, 11 a.m. So we haven't had people that are able to actually attend. So we're pushing the information out through Facebook Live. Just a quick introduction, I am Becky Montoya-Wright, and I am the mental health specialist for the Blue Ridge Unified School District. I also am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Arizona. And this is a collaboration between Blue Ridge School District, Nexus Coalition, and it's being funded through a grant from Blue Cross Blue Shield for a project called Not All Wounds Are Visible. And part of that project includes pushing out some good parenting information, supporting parents and families, especially in Navajo County, in collaboration of doing what we can that's best for the young people in our community. So we're going to talk briefly about parenting with a little bit of information, and I just want to put out a disclaimer. And I have notes here because I'm sharing information that's not all just from my head, so I want to make sure that I'm sharing it accurately. But this is actually a little thought from my head that I did put down on paper. So I just want to have a disclaimer that in theory, I have read a lot and studied a lot, and I have some solid resources to share. In practice, I am still working on it as a parent and in all of my roles. So as the rest of you, we sometimes wonder what would happen if someone saw how I'm interacting with my own kids. I would say most of the time you'd probably think I'm doing all right, but not all of the time. So disclaimer is, in theory, we've got some good stuff. In practice, we're all working on it. There have been some pumpkin smashing, swear word dropping, and oatmeal throwing in my parenting story. So definitely not something I have entirely figured out. But I do stand firmly in my belief that as we heighten our awareness and our parenting intention, we're going to optimize the opportunities for the potential of our children, but the big win is it's going to change us as humans, us as the parent. So we're going to optimize opportunities for the young people, for the children that we have influence over, but we are definitely going to experience some changes in our own lives as we experience these opportunities to adjust our parenting style. So I know that on Facebook Live, everything gets kind of flipped funny, and I don't have this in reverse, so you're just going to have to trust that I'm holding up a book that says The Teenage Brain. This book is by Frances E. Jensen, and last week we reviewed some key points about what's going on in the teenage brain. In a nutshell, the teenage brain is absolutely still developing. Even though some of our teenagers look to be in adult bodies, what's going on in the noggin is still a lot of neuroconnections and things that are reshaping, and dopamine dumps that are reinforcing learning, lots of things that are happening. It's a strong recommendation, The Teenage Brain by Frances E. Jensen, if you want to learn what's happening with the young people's brains that can help support us in our approach to parenting. That was last week. This week, we are going to be talking about parenting, again, with the brain in mind. Specifically, we're going to be talking about integrating the right and left hemispheres in our approach to parenting. And the books that we're going to be getting that information from today, they're both The Whole Brain Child. That's what this says, The Whole Brain Child. And this book is by Daniel Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson. I have listened to this book probably 3 times already this year, just as a reminder in my own parenting, but also in my private practice and with the parents that I help support. So many solid, helpful tools in this book. And they also have a workbook. So the Whole Brain Child workbook, I know you're looking at it flipped all backward, but I'll link these books on the page as well. And this is also by Daniel Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson. So the information I'm going to review with you now is from those two resources, and I want to make sure I do them right, so I'm going to consult my notes. So today we will focus on parenting with the brain in mind, specifically integrating the right and left hemispheres of the brain in our parenting approach. Naturally, we tend to have an inclination more toward right or left brain approaches to life and right or left brain approaches to parenting. Those who tend to be solution focused, practical, driven by logic, so that's kind of me. I am definitely a solution focused, practical, driven by logic kind of person and kind of parent. That is because I'm utilizing the strengths on the left hemisphere of the brain. Those whose focus is linked more to the emotions, to feelings, to the nonlinear contemplation, all really important skills as well, they are operating from the right hemisphere of the brain. So keeping this in mind, we're going to talk about how we respond as parents to challenging situations. And for teenagers, for young people, some of those challenging situations can have to do with when we have expectations from them, when we have curfews, when we want them to do chores, when we're setting limits or boundaries with social media or technology, video gaming, how they are interacting with their siblings. So the list could go on and on. Lots of things that could possibly be upsetting interactions between us and the young people that we have influence over. But before we consider how we respond to them as their parents, I want us to think about how do we like to be treated when we're upset? As adults, we can ponder back to when we were kids as well, but as adults, how do we like to be responded to when we're upset? Who are the people we turn to, and what is it that those people do and say that has us going to them as a trusted space? And then also, who do we not go to? In other words, maybe there are key people in our life, key relationships, but we don't really go to those people. And what is it about what they do or say that keeps us from going to them when we are having that emotional time of vulnerability? And just as we contemplate where we would go and who we would interact with when we have needs, that can help us start to have a vision or some understanding of how we're responding to our children. So it's likely that for us personally, we turn to those that have the skills that help us feel seen and heard. We typically are going to go to people that even if they know we've made a mistake and maybe it's all our fault, they might know that they might even completely understand that we did it to ourselves, whatever the issue is, that their style, whether they're a gentle or a more straightforward type of person, they're going to bring kindness to the situation. Rather than attacking us with criticism, they're going to approach our situation with curiosity and compassion. And the people that we turn to typically set aside their own assumptions and opinions to listen non-judgmentally to our lived experience while they're contemplating their best supports to offer us. That's generally who we're going to seek out in our times of need, or when we've had an upsetting thing occur, even if it's something we created in our own lives. And let's face it, as adults, we're pretty good at making messes for ourselves still. So I tell the junior high kids often when we're lecturing to junior high or to teenage people, the caveat is that we're all experiencing this human life too, and we all are struggling and trying to figure it out as well. So the more they can get figured out in their younger years, the more ahead of the game they're going to be as they continue getting older. But yeah, as we think about who we turn to for these supports, in a nutshell, the people, well, actually, let's talk about who we avoid. So the people we may avoid when we are upset or experiencing challenges are the people that we're going to avoid are typically coming at the situation only from a left hemisphere or a right hemisphere approach. And so that can really impact if we feel safe going to them. The people that we do turn to and feel the most supported by are likely integrating the right and the left brain in their skill set. So utilizing both the right and the left brain offers critical tools. Becoming aware of our tendencies of where we tend to dial in. So we see a problem, are we coming at it? Or our child breaks a rule, or our child gets in trouble, whether it's with us or at school. Is our natural inclination to be, well, let's solve this problem. Let's be logical. Let's be reasonable. Let's break this down. And immediately going to the solutions? Or is our reaction to immediately feel so bad for them and get swept up in the emotion of it and get stuck solely in the emotion of it? And both of these skills are super important. If we're coming to the situation with just this logic and reason, or coming to the situation with just strong emotion, we're probably not creating the most supportive environment. And as an adult, the people that we turn to support us are capable of taking the emotional and the logical and putting those together to bring us some solid supports where we feel seen and heard, so that the strategies that they help us to brainstorm are going to be things that we feel they truly are seeking for us with really solid intention. And that's going to be true for our children as well. A common parenting reaction. So we either catch our child breaking a rule, or they've done something that's disappointing, something's been broken, so many possible different scenarios. They're being disrespectful. A common parenting reaction, and this is not a helpful common reaction, is what would be referenced in the Whole Brain Child books as command and demand. And that's a real common approach, is we just stand our ground and we're the authority and we're going to command the situation and demand that things be changed. And what we're going to consider in an integrated whole brain strategy is going to be what's called the connect and redirect. So just the names alone bring a different vibe. Command and demand, or connect and redirect. So we'll talk real quick about connecting and redirecting. When we connect and redirect, step one is we're going to connect with the right brain. And then step two, we're going to redirect with the left brain. So we're going to connect with the emotional right brain, because that's where its skill sets are superpowered. And then once we establish that emotional connection, we're going to redirect with the skills in the left brain of strategizing and logic and figuring out some successful steps to take. Step one, when a young person is upset, if we react with logic, it often won't work because their emotional needs need to be met. So reacting with logic often won't work until we've responded to the right brain's emotional needs in a non-judgmental way, utilizing empathetic facial expressions and a nurturing tone. This approach supports the attunement that we're trying to establish with the young person, which invites them to feel seen and heard. They feel felt. And then in this phase, we can focus on appropriate skills such as appropriate human touch, maybe putting our arm around them, giving them a hug, depending on what is the right fit and the comfort level of that child. We're going to dial in our tone of voice, be aware of our facial expressions, our empathy, and our listening pauses. So this is how we're connecting. And this can be tricky. I'm saying this as if, oh yeah, we're just going to decide to connect. It does take some practice to dial in the connection. We'll address that in just a minute. Once we see or are able to observe that our young person, our child, is regulating that emotion, that's an indicator that the young person is ready for a redirected problem-solving movement in the parenting exchange. So this is where once they feel seen and heard, and that we notice that they're regulating that emotion, and we can go into all the brain science of this too, that dysregulation is probably being supported biologically by cortisol and adrenaline that's pumping through the child. And so while we're helping them to emotionally regulate, we're also respecting their body's biology, and that might need a bit to simmer down to where they're ready, where they're biologically ready to regulate that emotion and then move into the phase of redirecting. If we're trying to force redirection when a person, a child or a grown-up, is just sitting in a surge of adrenaline and cortisol, biologically, they really aren't capable of accessing that information in the most helpful way, because they're really going to be stuck in their fight, flight, freeze type responses. So getting that emotion dialed in, giving them that safe space, that's going to be a prerequisite before we can then move into the redirect. When the emotions have settled and regulated, then we're going to move towards this more redirected problem-solving left brain response. This is where we explore suggestions and moving forward with whatever the concerning issue was. In this phase, we look towards solutions. We use our words. We start planning. There might be some consequences that are being discussed at this point, logical explorations, and setting of boundaries. So these two steps, the connect with the emotions from the right brain, redirect with some logic and reasoning from the left brain. This allows us to shift from the command and demand to the connect and redirect. We emotionally meet the young person where they're at. We validate their feelings. We notice when the young person is regulating. Then we move forward towards strategies, solutions, consequences, and so on. In theory, this is a solid and effective approach. In actual practice, it's going to take a heightened awareness to restructure some of our preset patterns that we've just kind of already put in place. There are also some obstacles that can make it difficult to connect with people in general, and especially with that parent-child upsetting situation, whatever it might be. So there is an acronym called HALT, and that stands for hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Anytime that we are hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, we may not be bringing our best connecting skills to that particular situation. So we want to address those needs. There, we may need a little bit, even just our awareness. It doesn't mean that we can't be a parent or have a parenting interaction. Honestly, if we refused to parent when we were hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, we probably would never parent, because we're usually one of those things. But our awareness that it is impacting us can help us to supercharge or if possible, have a snack, whatever we might need to do so that we can optimize how we're responding in our efforts to connect with the child. We might struggle to connect with our child because of different fears. One of the fears that we might have when we start considering this connect and redirect approach could be the fear of, you're asking me to be soft and gentle when my child breaks a rule. You're suggesting that I explore their feelings before we move into immediate consequences. And that there can be fear of, well, if I do that, I'm validating the inappropriate behavior. I'm validating the, bad behavior by that softer approach. And so that can actually keep us from connecting. We can think, yikes, I don't want to do that. So we do have to start considering our truths and what works and what we're willing to explore if that fear is being a hang-up for us. We might be having expectations for the young person that really don't match their skill set or their maturity level. So we might be expecting more than they're capable of giving, and that can also impact our ability to connect with them. And the big worry, what are people around me thinking? Sometimes we have a little bit of an audience watching us parent. Our other children might be present. We might be around family or friends. Maybe we live in a home with multiple families, or we're having this incident occur at the store, in a public setting. And so we might be thinking, oh, all eyes are on me. People are watching. Are they going to think I'm coming off too harsh, or are they going to think I'm a pushover? And so either one could really direct us, rather than considering the best response and considering our energies to connect and redirect. Instead, we might be having our motivation come from what we're worried other people think we're going to say or do. Maybe we want to impress them with what a firm parent we are, and so we come off really harsh. Or, maybe we just we want to come off completely like the sweetest, most pushed over parent, so they think we're always gentle with our kids. And the answer isn't to go all right brain or all left brain. It's to integrate those together, even if we're parenting in front of other people, people that our own parents, our in-laws. Some of those situations can be a little stressful. And another thing that could prevent us in being successful with connecting would be if we're just overwhelmed and not getting the supports that we personally need. So as we become aware of all of the things that could hinder our ability to connect, then we can start to strategize in making sure that we have the supports that we need to set that platform in place for successful connecting with our young person. If the connect and redirect approach seems like something you're on board with, but you aren't sure how to implement it, or maybe you're going to watch this video or maybe even get the books and read it, and you're thinking, yeah, I'm down, I want to give that a go, but it's just not starting to unfold the way you thought. One thing you can do is start to brainstorm some common scenarios that seem to be hiccups or huge challenges with you and your child. What do some of those situations look like? Write them down, put them maybe in the notes in your phone, however you like to keep records of things. And then next to that, write down what your typical response or reaction is. When my child does this, I typically say and do this, and then they typically say and do this. So those are the three parts. Here's the beginning, here's how I react to it, and then here's what their reaction is to my reaction. And so what we want to do, we can't really change necessarily that first thing. The problem is going to probably continue to present itself. So here's the problem, but how would this middle piece look if instead of command and demand, you were coming at it with connect and redirect? So kind of script that out. This is what happens. Now I'm looking towards connect and redirect, and then explore that and see how that starts to change their response to you. For one, a young person is pretty tuned into us and our typical reactions. So even if you don't end up having ideal endings to these interactions, you're going to surprise your kid by responding in a different way. At minimum, there's going to be like whoa, this is not typically how my parent reacts to this. And they seem to be responding in such a calm, insightful manner. I mean, their brain might not be using those words, but it's going to be something that they'll notice, whether they point it out or express any appreciation. Probably not, but they might be thrown off by it, which could start a new outcome in and of itself. So we can brainstorm these situations so that we can start to practice them in our mind. We can imagine, okay, we often have problems with them not wanting to turn their phones off in the evening, if that's a problem you face. And I usually say this and they usually do this. But what if I approach them with the right brain first and said, acknowledge that it might be really tough emotionally knowing their friends are carrying on these social connections throughout the evening, and I'm asking my child not to be a part of that. And so really try to meet them where they're at on the emotional piece, and then explore how we can find a space logically and reasonably with some boundaries that are going to work. So hopefully if you do start to successfully use the connect and redirect in real life, you'll be able to take note of these new outcomes. But what I feel like I can't make any kind of guarantees or even set people up for high hopes that all of a sudden they're going to be like, oh my gosh, my kid's an angel now. They've got it all together. They're just doing everything I've asked. I don't think that that's a realistic thing to put out there. I do think it is very realistic and even close to guaranteed that as we start to shift towards a connect and redirect approach, utilizing the right and left hemisphere as we interact with our kids and with other people, whether or not we see optimized outcomes with our children, we are going to see changes in us. Our perspective's going to shift and we're going to feel more in charge of the things that we truly have charge over, which are the way that we connect with people, things that maybe we didn't even know we had charge over. So whether the degree to which it changes your child, we're gonna put out that potential and that invitation and that opportunity for them. The degree that it changes you, there's no limits on that. It's something you can just continue to expand and explore in your parenting and in all of your relationships. As I mentioned earlier, I do stand firmly that my belief is that as we heighten our awareness and our parenting intentions, it will optimize the opportunities and potential for our children, but it will absolutely give us opportunities to change in our parenting style and become a better version of ourselves. And that's going to be a huge win. So again, this information came from the Whole Brain Child, the book and the workbook. We were focusing on shifting from command and demand to connect and redirect. 2 steps. First, seek the emotional connection with the child before we start moving into the strategizing logic approach. We want to couple those things together. If we tend to always just be driven by logic and reason, or we tend to just be swept up in the emotion of it, we're only bringing half of our brain to the game. And our children are going to benefit when we bring the whole deal, and it's going to be an invitation for them to engage both hemispheres of their brain. It's going to be a cool thing. It's a super win. I'm going to keep this video posted on the counselor page. I'm going to link the books that I've referenced for anyone who's interested. And just a couple of other things that are coming up. We will do another one of these parenting classes on Tuesday, November 7th, also at 11 a.m., but we'll have it live and also available for later viewing. If you're interested in other free parenting and mental health resources and classes that are in our community right now, and by our community, I mean the White Mountains of Arizona, Navajo County, go to the website nexuscoalition.org. So Nexus is Nexus coalition.org. And they're going to have their upcoming events and things that you might be interested in participating in. They're also on Facebook. As a reminder, our grant is called Not All Wounds Are Visible, and we're trying to push out there that the national lifeline is now only 3 digits, 988. Somebody experiencing a mental health crisis can dial 988. And if it's a medical or overdose related, of course, we would just always go with 911 and get those responders immediately to the person. One other exciting thing, next Monday, I'm going to be doing a Facebook Live chat with Donna Faye Whitesinger. I'm so excited to do this with her. And that's going to be something you can view Monday live at 5:30, or we will keep it up so that people can view that later as well. Thank you for viewing this, and hopefully one little step at a time we'll start dialing in those parenting information and those parenting skills. And remember to talk nice to yourself. Some days you're going to blow it, some days you're going to do things and you're going to think, I know better, I'm learning new things and I know better. And just be compassionate with yourself and meet yourself where you're at as we move through this process. Kids are the best. And sometimes they're the worst, man, they're hard. So we just got to keep on keeping on as we try to figure this out together. Have a good one.